Kia ora koutou, Markie here. Now I'm putting my camera at my computer screen, so you might get a horrible jazzy effect, and I give the usual warning. Please don't watch if you are likely to get triggered into a migraine or a seizure or anything like that. I'm not sure if that actually happens, but you know, we don't want to take the risk. And the reason for this is I'm low tech. This is a low tech channel. If you're new to the channel, this is all content and no style. It's not scripted, it's informal. The style isn't to everybody's taste, so don't watch this video and then complain about my presentation style, because that's just bloody rude. If this is for you, carry on watching and enjoy. If it's not for you, go and find something you do enjoy. So this is an intersection of lots of different, or a few different series that I do, because I do series of videos. So you might be puzzled by the name of my channel being about retroactive jealousy, which is a mental health condition, and the fact that a lot of my videos aren't actually about retroactive jealousy. Well, the purpose of the channel is to get the material which is about retroactive jealousy out there to people who need it, who are suffering alone and in ignorance, not aware that it's something that can be treated. But we make videos about all kinds of things, because you don't just want to kind of scrape the barrel trying to think of a new video to do on retroactive jealousy every day. I try and put videos out daily. I don't always succeed in that. I want the retroactive jealousy videos that I do to be quality videos, and then the rest of the videos will be either interesting, informative, or entertaining, or a combination of those three things, but about other topics. And I enjoy that because I like posting on other topics. It would do my head in to have lots of separate channels. So this is also a neurodivergent channel. I have ADHD and autism and a whole bunch of other things that make organisation quite tricky. So I couldn't do it any other way. If I tried to do it in a more slick, organised way, it just wouldn't happen, and there would be no videos. So so that's the background. Oh, excuse me, because I was really keen to make this video. I just had the idea while I was having lunch, and then rushed to do it. I've still got bits of almond from dark chocolate almond chocolate bar in my mouth. They hide, don't they, and wait till you're about to say something, and then they choke you or tickle your throat. So I do different series, and something that I occasionally make a foray into, is that the right word, is true crime, which I am very ambivalent about doing. And I've talked about my ambivalence in other videos, so I won't share it here. If I do true crime videos, they always get massively more views than the other stuff that I do. So if I was mercenary, I'd just do true crime videos. Usually, because I'm a psychotherapist, if I do approach true crime, it's usually from a psychological point of view, or from a deception detection point of view, because I'm very interested in that. Okay, so I studied a lot of things like body language and statement analysis. So I have a small playlist and a small series on true crime. And I also have a playlist in a series on YouTube channels that I enjoy, my favorite YouTube channels. And this is what I'm going to do, is do a commentary on one of them, which is a channel called Deception Detective. And I'll put a link in the I'll put a link in the description. Now, the guy that hosts this channel is he's American, an attorney, or what we would say, well, not in the UK anymore, not in Kansas anymore, what I would kind of generally say is a lawyer, but they say attorney, don't they? And he's also trained in statement analysis. Now, I'm looking at the state of my screen. It's terrible, isn't it? I'm going to get the old feather duster out. See, I told you I had ADHD. This is what to expect on my channel. If you want anything any different, just go away. I don't want you if you're not nice. I want nice people watching this channel. So he's trained in statement analysis. So statement analysis, I've also done some training in, and I'd still consider myself at the student level. But it's a really interesting process whereby you analyze a written or verbal statement. So you need to get, if it's a verbal statement, you need to transcribe it. And there's a process by which you can identify, potential signs of deception. So it's not something that can be used in court. Some countries will use it in court, but it can be used by law enforcement agencies to help identify detection, but can be used by anyone to identify detection. And I'm always saying to people, if you've got anything you want me to do statement analysis on, send it to me and I'll have a crack at it. Don't send me anything massively long. But have a look at my other video on that, because that goes into a bit more detail about how I use that, and what kind of statements are good to work on and what kind of statements are bad to not so helpful to work on. So he is he follows cases, usually kind of true crime, the stuff that's doing the rounds in the true crime online community. Often the quite famous ones, or breaking cases. Not always criminal stuff. Sometimes he's talked about, he's covered kind of YouTubers who've told porcupines. If you're not from the UK or you don't know Cockney rhyming slang, pork pies lies. But he does what it says on the box. He detects deception using statement analysis. So statement analysis is a very specific approach. Okay, it's not just a general word for when you analyze a statement. It's a particular method, and it's very process orientated. So when you do statement analysis, you go ideally you do it written. He does it on the hoof, which you can do, but you go through each sentence one at a time and look at it for a number of different you're looking for a number of different things. You're looking for things like tenses, tense changes, certain words are kind of red flags, and that kind of thing. It's a really interesting thing. I love statement analysis. Now, what I want to do, so this video, so it hits the two different series of mine. It hits, I said lots of series, but it's two in fact, isn't it? I exaggerate there. It hits my true crime series, and it hits my favorite YouTube channel series. But yeah, I guess, have I got a series on statement analysis? I don't know if I have. I've done videos on statement analysis. If I've got a series and a playlist on statement analysis, it's 3, which isn't bad, is it? And then I'd also put it in the miscellaneous playlist as well, so that makes it 4. So yeah, I'm regaining lost ground here with the number of series that this comes into. So what I want to do is just run through this with you. I've just watched it, and give a commentary on it. So some of the commentary will be on things that I pick up. So what it's looking at is it's an interview with John Ramsey, and I'll give you the background to the Jonbenet Ramsey case, as per the title. I'll give you a bit of background for that if you're not familiar with it. If you're not into true crime, you probably wouldn't know about it. It's a 30-year-old case, and I'll be commenting on the interview and some of the red flags or interesting things that John Ramsey says in the interview, and I'll also be commenting on deception detectives commenting on the commentary. So if you comment on this video, if you were to do a video where you show my video and you comment on my video, you'd be commenting on the commentary of the interview. Isn't that infinite? Do they call that infinite regress? I think when that happens, is that when you put two mirrors facing one another and they kind of take you off into infinity? I think they call it infinite regress, don't they? I'm not sure. So, I think it's probably not necessary for me to say that I like this channel. It's one of my favourites, yeah, I like the guy that presents it. He keeps himself a bit anonymous, because I believe he's also a practicing attorney, or can still be a practicing attorney. So that's why he calls himself Deception Detective, or refers to himself as DD. And that's why, there's a picture of him there, you'll see a lot more of him. That's why he has the glasses and the baseball cap, and he doesn't have the camera pointing directly towards him. It's off on the side, so you get a profile, but you don't get a face or a full frontal view. So that's where he's coming from. And he's done videos on all kinds of things. So he's done the Madeleine McCann, which I've talked about in some of the videos and stuff like that. And so I'm not going to be applying statement analysis in my commentary, although I will be informed by statement analysis, but I'm not deliberately setting out to use statement analysis. If I was to use statement analysis, I would get a transcript of everything, and then I would painstakingly go through it. You know, so there's about, I don't know how many criteria there are that you look at, but let's say there's 20. So you look at each sentence through the lens of these 20 criteria. And that's how I would approach statement analysis. So statement analysis is homework, you know, it's a real kind of studious, methodical piece of work, whereas I'm just giving some comments. They're not off the top of my head, because I watched this video before, and at various points I thought, and ooh, and various things that I thought were very interesting came up for me while I was watching this. So so I'm referring to, you know, to my previous thoughts, but I'll probably also come up with some spontaneous stuff as we go along. No doubt I will. So the Jonbenet Ramsey case. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, about 30 years ago, I think it was Boulder, Colorado, a family. So there's a family. There's Patsy and John are the parents, and they have living with them, they have Jonbenet, who is, I believe, 6, and oh no, the screen's gone, and you can see my bald head and a vague shadow of me. I don't hide from the camera, but I don't think I'm particularly easy on the eye. I prefer to give you something else to look at. So little girl, she's on my feed there actually. Jonbenet Ramsey, and she was 6. Her brother was a little bit older, I think. And Christmas Day, I think it was Christmas Day, could have been Christmas Eve. The story is that Mum gets up because they're going to travel that day, and finds a ransom note saying, "We've got your daughter, blah 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 blah." And it really does say blah blah blah, because it's a really long, complicated ransom note, which is unusual. Ransom notes aren't normally like that. But later on, after the police arrive, they find the body of poor Jonbenet, and she's been garroted, and she's also got an injury to her skull. A concussion injury, if that's the right term. So she's been hit with something, and it's actually caved in her skull to a certain extent. I'm not sure, and I think she died of the garroting. The garroting, I think, happened afterwards. And I mean, you can find out loads about this case. I'm not going to give you a big background on it, because there's just so much information available about it, and there's a lorry outside, so sorry about the noise. But there were so many things that didn't add up, and the ransom note was just weird, really. So the general theory as to what happened, well, I agree with DD, as we'll call him from now on, Deception Detective. I agree with his theory on what happened, and which he will outline a little bit later into the video. So I don't need to share my theory on this, but I totally agree with where he's coming from, which of course is a bias. So when you're analysing something, you know, you want to get away from a bias, but at least you need to know your bias, and then try and step to one side of it, really. But I'm not doing pure statement analysis. I'm just making a a commentary. So I don't need to worry too much about that in this instance. So we're going to roll the video. Pain in the arse, the lorry's just arrived outside. I've got all the windows open because it's really hot as well. I'm going to play the video, and I will pause it and chip in at various points. Sometimes to comment on what's John Ramsey's saying, and sometimes to comment on what DD is saying. So here we go. Are you ready? Make yourselves comfortable. So the video is 21 minutes. So this video is going to be at least 21 more minutes of this video, and then I'll be rounding up at the end. So you're in for at least 20 more minutes. And if you can watch to the end, that would be great, because that actually persuades the YouTube algorithm to more prominently share all of our videos, including the ones on retroactive jealousy, the ones that help people and potentially save lives. So if you watch to the very end, you're doing us and people who are suffering with a horrible mental health condition and their partners who are suffering alongside them, you're doing everybody a huge favor. So before we begin, you're just going to have a slurp of coffee. I don't literally slurp, I disapprove of slurping. Slurping things are really hot, actually. But otherwise, slurping is unnecessary. Might even do a video on that, such as the diversity of topics that we cover on this channel. So, I hope you can hear okay. Don't want to get up and close the window because we'll lose the moment. So, action.
To start, I feel like there is this perception.
So we're straight into the video now of the interview, and DD is there in that little box that watch him.
So composed, or it's John's tales, and we reached out to you. There is no off the record on. You told me.
Well, I've done a number of interviews over the years, and my main reason for engaging the media is to keep pressure on the police to do their job. And I've never wanted the questions in advance, because I want to respond spontaneously. If I have a made-up answer, then I'll think, what was my answer for this question? I'd rather just, ask the question and I'll spontaneously respond. And it could be, when did you stop beating your wife? And no boundaries. On the questions.
I got lots of questions.
Yeah, and so it's easier for me.
Yeah.
It's almost like I don't have to prepare.
Ideal. Well, I did prepare.
John never said he doesn't prepare for interviews. He just said it's almost like he doesn't have to. Nor did he say he'll answer truthfully, just spontaneously. And I think there's a reason for that, because his story about Christmas 1996 is a scripted lie. I'll show you why I think so in this video. But before we get too deep, just because I think John is a liar, that doesn't mean I think he's a killer. If you've seen my other videos in this series, you already know who my top suspect is. If not, don't worry, they're about to mention him, and I'll explain my full theory next.
It's almost like I don't have to prepare.
Ideal. Well, I did prepare. For the both of us.
Thank you. Okay, good.
Jonbenet, she would be, we were talking about this earlier too, like she would be almost my age right now.
Yes, I realize that.
And what is that like? Like, what is she, when you picture her, she's stuck at 6, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. She's still my little girl. And I can't imagine what she would be like as an adult.
Do you feel like you're ever stuck in 1996?
No. I mean, I've learned two things. One, life's not easy all the time, and life's not always fair. And it's like, okay, those are the game rules. Let's keep at it. And one of the things I've noticed with families that have lost a child, and I've looked at this in some detail, I don't know what the percentage is. It's a majority percentage end up in a divorce. And for Patsy and I, we fortunately...
Just going to pause briefly there. Now, forgive me, this channel is known for its shaky camera because I just hold it with I hold an iPhone, and I'm doing it with one hand and a mouse in the other, and also trying to slurp coffee, or not slurp coffee. Now, this deception detective, he doesn't like analysing body language. He thinks it's unreliable. Now, I've studied a lot of body language. I'm not good at following body language because I think as being autistic, I'm not good at actually following people's facial expressions. I much more listen to people's words. I listen very closely to people's words. But I do study body language, and I've done a video on that actually, but it was within a particular context. It was in a series about autism and social skills. But I watch channels like the Behaviour Panel, which is a brilliant body language channel. And one of the things that they talk about on there is something called a tongue jut, which John just did then. Now, a tongue jut is where you stick your tongue out, not like in a, like you're trying to, like you're a 5-year-old trying to be rude. The tongue just kind of comes out, it pokes out between the lips. It's not the same as lip licking, which has a different meaning and a different association. But a tongue jut is associated with rejection. The theory behind it, and I think this is Desmond Morris, or it might have been Joe Navarro, that it's the first way that a child can reject something. You try and stick some baby food into baby's mouth and he doesn't like it, he or she will stick their tongue out to push the unwanted food out from their mouth. So it's a kind of rudimentary body language for no, essentially, but also, you know, it's something that you don't like. If you don't like something, you can often do a tongue jerk. Now, single behaviours are not enough to do a body language analysis upon. All good body language analysts will look for clusters of behaviours. So this may mean nothing, okay? But look out for it in the rest of the video, because he does do a tongue jerk a few other times now. I'm not sure if I'm going to successfully take it back to
my age right now.
Notice where he does the tongue jerk.
What is that like? What is she when you picture her?
And see if you think that's significant. I think there's a couple of times where it's kind of interesting, the points where he does the tongue jerk, but on its own it kind of means nothing. So don't make too much of this, but it is interesting. Okay, so if it was combined with other things, it might start to build, might start to paint a picture. So it's worth watching, but you can't just say, oh, he's done a tongue jerk and that means X. And also there's people's baseline, so he may get dry lips, he may do a tongue jerk. I know people that just tongue jerk all the time, and it doesn't mean anything. And I know people that tongue jerk when they are talking about things that they don't like, things that disgust them or they dislike. So one of the theories is that, sometimes people will do a tongue jerk, it will give you a bit of a clue, really. So maybe something that's unspoken, that maybe they're not saying they don't like something, but their body is giving them away. So I'm gonna have a slurp of coffee. So this video really is in the moment. I got my mojo up and I'm going for it, and the production is worse than normal, which is saying something.
She's stuck at 6, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. She's still my little girl, and I can't imagine what she would be like as an adult.
Do you feel like you're ever stuck in 1996?
No. I mean, I've learned two things. One, life's not easy all the time, and life's not always fair. And it's like, okay, those are the game rules. Let's keep at it. And one of the things I've noticed with families that have lost a child, and I've looked at this in some detail, I don't know what the percentage is. It's a majority percentage end up in a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And for Patsy and I, we fortunately, what really got us up off the floor was the realization we have 3 other children now that need us desperately to be strong. They're hurt, they're crushed, they've lost. At their age, they shouldn't have to deal with the loss and death of a family member.
Right, I'm going to stop there. But I've also realised that I didn't go back to the original tongue jerk. I didn't rewind far enough. So apologies for that. I'm not going to do it now, because that's just going to be me fumbling around for even longer. But you can watch this video. You can go to the Deception Detective. It's not easy to say, is it? That's no wonder he calls himself DD. You can go to the original DD video and watch this, or you can access. I don't know where, but you'd be able to access this interview online. I'm sure you better get it on YouTube without too much searching. So one of the things that DD often comments upon, and he does comment upon one of these things, but I'm not quite sure what he's trying to say, is sometimes if somebody's done something that they are not disclosing, it will leak into their language, and they will use turns of phrase that might be suggestive of what the unspoken thing is. Okay, so he does a lot on Madeleine McCann, as I said, and he reckons that Jerry McCann uses a lot of water-based phrases. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but the things like, oh, I feel like I'm sinking, or I'm all adrift, or I'm all I want to float this idea, that kind of thing. And he thinks that might be an indication that the body of poor little Madeleine is underwater. That she's in the sea somewhere, or down a well or something like that. Now, there's 2 things that John Ramsey says here. Pick up off the floor, which Dee Dee does comment on, and also crush. So with Jonbenet, there was a crush, you know, her skull was crushed, not, you know, completely kind of caved in, but there was, you know, there was a fracture and an indentation, and also she was garroted, and therefore her, you know, her throat, you know, would have been crushed. You know, it was quite a nasty, you know, really. So with garroting, it's, you know, it's worse than like a manual strangulation, because the amount of force that's going, it's really, sorry, this is a bit grisly, but it's really kind of squeezing the neck. So somebody, whoever the murderer was, or maybe not whoever the murderer was, this is the point, but somebody did that. So so we've got the word crush, and we've got the word pick up off the floor. Now the pick up off the floor, which Dee Dee does allude to, has resonances with one of the very unusual things about this case is the police didn't handle it very well, certainly in the initial stages, and the detective that came to see them actually asked the family to search the house. And so they were, you know, presuming that Jonbenet wasn't there, that she'd been kidnapped, but they searched the house, and there was a basement room where he found her on the floor. Rather than leave her there, you know, leave the crime scene untouched, he picked her up off the floor and brought her into an upstairs room where, you know, where everybody was waiting, where the police were, thus of course contaminating all the evidence. Okay, now, you know, opinions differ as to whether this was just, you know, the desperate act of a bereaved father, or whether this was an attempt to contaminate evidence. And there are plenty of people that would argue a good case for either. Sorry, I'm really struggling with holding this camera up today for some reason. So interesting. So, and that's one of the things that is in statement analysis, that you know, phrases that relate to something that's being concealed will leak into general language. So we've got two there, and Dee Dee does comment on one of them. I can't remember what his comment was, so I'm interested to listen to that again, actually, which will come up very soon.
John mentioned his children from both marriages, but he's really talking about Burke. His other children were older when Jonbenet died, and they'd actually already lost a family member. Jonbenet's half-sister died in a car crash. So when John said that's what got him and Patsy up off the floor, he may have meant that literally. Here's how I described it in my video, 4 words liars use. Based on my analysis, I think that Burke...
Right, I'm going to pause again, because Dee Dee, he's normally very good, but he hasn't done a very good job of selling himself here, because he's alluding to a product that he has created, but he isn't actually mentioning it by name. So, the deception deck. So what he's done is he's taken 52 principles from statement analysis, and he's illustrated them all on cards. So rather than read all this in a book, he sells a pack of cards, and each card has one of the principles on it. And you'll see him during the course of this video flash some of these cards, but it's not that easy to see, because obviously he's just in this little box on the side of the screen. I was watching it on an iPhone as well, so he flashes the card at various points when he's talking about a particular aspect of deception detection. And here he is with leakage. So let's see if we can read it, because they are good, and he sells. So check this out. You might want to buy his pack of cards. I don't get any commission or anything on that, but I like the guy. I like what he stands for, so I'm happy to promote him. So there's a quote from Freud: "Liars can unintentionally reveal the truth through their choice of words, as it's challenging to suppress real memories while telling falsehoods. If someone repeatedly uses an unusual phrase or word, it might be a clue worth investigating." And then there's an example. So in 2020, after reporting her daughter Malia missing, Sarah Irvin described to the press feeling drained. Later, Malia, is that how you say it, was found in a storm drain. The coincidence in Irvin's choice of the word drained and the discovery location of Malia's body suggests a possibility of Irvin inadvertently leaking hidden information about her daughter's whereabouts during her interaction with the media. Yeah, so look out for these cards, these deception deck cards. They will pop up at various points. So let's go back to hear what Dee Dee's saying.
It may have meant that, literally. Here's how I described it in my video, 4 words liars use. Based on my analysis, I think that Burke, who was 9 at the time, accidentally killed his sister. And then the parents had a decision to make. They had to decide, do we call the police? And now Burke is going to be known as the kid who killed his sister for the rest of his life. And this is going to follow him for the rest of his life. Right? Jonbenet's already dead. Do we also throw our other son under the bus? Or do we cover up the murder? Do we stage a kidnapping and write a fake ransom note and then discover the body when the police get here so that both of us and Burke can get off scot-free? And I think that's what happened. John took Patsy aside and said, look, we're going to cover this up. Sit down. I'm going to dictate a ransom note to you. You're going to write it down, and in the morning you're going to pretend to find this note and you're going to call 911. I know it might seem far-fetched, but it's far more credible than the Ramsey's version of events, which is riddled with lies, one of which is coming up next. See if you can spot it.
At their age, they shouldn't have to deal with the loss and death of a family member.
Do you feel like you're still in shock?
You don't get over the murder, the loss of a child. You move beyond it.
Did you ever give yourself time to have a pity party? Because if anyone deserves a pity party...
You do, once in a while, yeah. Well, what was interesting was sometimes I'd be down, Patsy'd be up, and we sort of could offset each other.
We'll get into, I think, why they kind of looked at you guys as a whole. But even in looking at the family, I do feel like, at least initially, Patsy, bore the brunt of that.
She did.
And for, a long time, I even watched something they did on Netflix a while ago called The Casting Jonbenet. And there's, a line in there where the guy was like, oh, I bet she was probably a horrible bitch of a mother.
No, she was a wonderful mother. Amazing mother.
Okay, so I'm just going to pause to share a bit of my opinion here, because I've watched quite a lot of videos of Patsy. Now, Patsy has, at the point of this video, she is no longer with us. So she died of cancer. Now you'll hear them refer in this video to when she had cancer before and recovered, but sadly it came back like it often does, which is horrible, isn't it? I hate that when people kind of have this sort of false hope that it's all gone and then it comes back. So I feel for anyone that's experienced that, or with anyone that's experienced that. So we're talking about Patsy, John's wife, Jonbenet's mother. So Burke is the Dee Dee referred to just then. That's the older brother, the 9-year-old. It's a commonly held opinion that that Burke might have done it. I mean, the likelihood is it was somebody in the household that did it. That only gives you 3 people. So we don't think that Burke, garroted his sister. What the commonly held opinion is that Burke accidentally killed Jonbenet. Or accidentally, mortally wounded her would be a better way of putting it, because she was actually, I believe she was supposed to be alive, and she actually died through the garrote, not the head injury. So it appeared like they thought she was dead, or they thought she was mortally wounded. They didn't want, as Dee Dee will explain, they didn't want Burke to, have his whole life ruined by this. So they staged a murder. And staged a ransom note, a kidnapping, but of course Jonbenet never left the house. But that's not the point I paused to make. The point I paused to make was that having watched a lot of videos of Patsy, she doesn't. They allude to this. She doesn't come across well on television. That doesn't mean that she's guilty of anything. Like I say, I don't think either of the parents were guilty of murder. I don't think Burke was guilty of murder. I think it was an accidental mortal injury that was manipulated and staged with a very dodgy ransom note. Check out some of the videos of this if you've not heard about it, because the ransom note is really, I don't know how they've not been convicted actually. Because the ransom note is that we should, believe to be forged. I believe it to be forged. Is so dodgy. It just doesn't make sense. So Patsy, that's what we want to talk about. Patsy, stay on topic, Markie. So Patsy, yeah, I find her very dislikable. she's now she was a beauty queen in her youth. She always so she's what most people would think would describe as an attractive woman. She's got this tiny little button nose. I don't particularly find her attractive. And she's, you know, perfectly presented. And she's just got a funny way about her. She talks with her chin. So I don't know if she just did that all the time, but she talks with her chin. She moves her chin around to you know, as to emphasize what she's saying in the rhythm of what you know, how she's speaking and stuff, which kind of consequently means she kind of puts her chin in the air a little bit, which can give the impression of arrogance. In terms of body language, often sticking the chin in the air is a sign of arrogance, and it's an aggressive sign. So it's a little bit like if you see a pub fight brewing, what one person might do is throw his chin up and throw his arms back. I say his because it's usually males that do this, and what that does is it exposes all the vulnerable parts of the body. It exposes all the arteries in the neck, and it exposes the chest, and it's a kind of sign saying, come on, you know, come on, if you're hard enough, do your worst, you know, I'm not scared that you're going to hurt me, you know, you can't do anything to me. So it's a kind of sign of defiance. So it may be that when people see Patsy with her chin in the air wobbling around, that it gives the impression of arrogance, aggression, haughtiness, and it may of course have nothing to do with that. It's probably just a mannerism that she has. I find it very annoying. Now obviously we're seeing Patsy as well when she's on the ropes, you know, because this family have been, you know, consistently accused of foul play all the way through. And whenever she's on television doing interviews, she's not giving recipes or sharing stories about her nice experiences on holiday. You know, she's kind of often defending herself. So so her tone and her whole mannerism is defensive, understandably so. You know, it's appropriate time to be defensive. So she doesn't come across well. So I just wanted to illustrate that. They allude to it a bit further on, that she doesn't come across well, but hopefully that paints more of a picture of how she doesn't come across so well. And I think the other thing that probably makes it worse is John is kind of the opposite. John, you know, I don't know how you found him in this video, but I find him very likable. You know, he's kind of got this kind of very calm, confident, quite kind of avuncular, genial personality. You know, he gets a bit cross in some of the videos as well, but he doesn't come across in the same way as Patsy. So I think, you know, the contrast between the two of them, that John comes across particularly well. You know, John has got a good demeanor for television, whereas Patsy hasn't, which is kind of interesting because Patsy was all into modeling and pageants and that kind of thing, but doesn't come across very well at all. So it's interesting. So it's important with all these things, you know, we learn, you know, all the knowledge about body language and statements and things like that. It's all about clusters of things. It's all about a picture that we build out of, you know, lots of different elements. It's not just, you know, one gesture, and, you know, one gesture means X. The classic one is people say if you scratch your nose you're lying, which is bollocks. I mean, if you scratch your nose and do a whole bunch of other deception indicators, it might mean you're lying. But if you just scratch your nose, that probably means nothing. Okay, so let's get back into the interview.
Why do you think they latched onto her so much? When I know that there was, if people want to have questions about what happened in the home, why is it her that everyone became fixated on?
Patsy was a very strong woman. Maybe didn't come across so good on television, I was told by people.
Still didn't see the card. What's the card?
But she was a wonderful
You can't see it, Dee.
She's a wonderful stepmother. And I never heard her say anything negative about anybody. She's just a good person.
We have our first lie, and they only get bigger from here. If you're not familiar, I categorize lies into 3 buckets based on the testimony oath.
Okay, so sorry, DD, just to interrupt you there. Something I noticed there for the first time, and it's a body language thing, which DD doesn't approve of, but I like body language, so I'm going to mention it, is John shrugged one shoulder when he was saying that, at the point where DD has identified a lie, which is interesting. So I guess that's a small cluster. It's two things, isn't it? It's the shrug of one shoulder. Shrug of one shoulder is considered to indicate not being sure about something. I can't remember what the difference is between a shrug of both shoulders and a shrug of one shoulder. We can look that up. So that's interesting, but like I said, we can't make too much of it. I'm not saying that means anything. It might do, it might not. But DD reckons that she's told her that he's telling a porcupine here, and that the bit that he thinks is a lie is that she's never said anything negative about anyone. Now, annoyingly, DD doesn't come up with his source for that assertion. So presumably, in the body of film footage of Patsy, she's been caught saying something negative about someone. So I'm sure, because DD's been an attorney and he's a great observer. I'm sure he has got some evidence. I don't doubt that for 1 minute, but I'd like to know what that is. I'd be curious. So DD, if you're watching, I'm sure you won't be, because my channel's a tiny, weeny little channel compared to yours. This probably won't even come into your radar. But if you are watching, I would be curious to know what evidence you're citing. As I say, I don't disbelieve you at all. I'm just curious to know where Patsy's been caught saying negative things about people. Okay, so back into it.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So there's lies of commission when someone fails to tell the truth. There's lies of omission when someone tells the truth, but not the whole truth. And finally, there's information treatment when someone tells the literal truth, but adds in other stuff like hedges, caveats, and irrelevant details to mislead the listener. In this case, John's claim that Patsy never said anything negative about anyone may have been a harmless exaggeration, but it was still a lie. And it revealed two important things about John, which are both associated with compulsive liars. The first thing it revealed is just how easily and casually John lies. He did it directly to Ashley Flower's face, and he did it on camera. And the second is what he lied about. He wasn't lying to spare himself prison or to win $1 million. He was lying about something irrelevant and unimportant. Let's keep listening, because the lies only get bigger.
And I never heard her say anything.
Gonna pause there. I don't think it was irrelevant and unimportant, because so let's say this theory that we have is correct, that Burke mortally wounded Jonbenet, and one or other or both parents staged a kidnapping scene, which included going on to garrote. Sorry, there's grisly stuff to talk about. To garrote Jonbenet and hide her in the basement and write the ransom note and all that kind of thing. Let's say that did happen. That we've already established that their motivation for doing this is to protect their son Burke from the consequences. Now Burke is, I think he's got a lot of indicators that he has autism and maybe other, maybe some developmental disorders, and he certainly had some behavioural problems, because he used to do some kind of funny stuff with poo, which is talked about in some of the other videos on this topic. So so there's a vulnerability around Burke. He's only 9. In America, as in lots of other countries, I think when children commit criminal offences, they often treat them like adults. And I've worked with a lot of children that have committed offences, and you have to look at it in a whole completely different light. The way a child breaks the law and maybe does something violent, it's a whole different process than when an adult does it. And people that do these things as children very seldom go on to do them as adults. It's a whole different thing. But I think the American criminal justice system and the whole culture is so persecutory of children. So if that's what's happened and they've done all these things, much as they're horrible, you could make a strong argument that they're doing doing it for the right reason, couldn't you? You know, they're trying to protect their son from consequences that as a child he shouldn't face, in my opinion, and save him from a ruined life. So, and any kind of subsequent lying is an attempt to maintain that deception, which is, you know, arguably for very good reasons. So even something like, you know, lying about Patsy, if he's lying, if he is lying, it would be to try and make her look like a good person rather than a bad person, to use very simplistic language. So it's not an irrelevant lie, is it? It's case building. It's all part of building the case that you know, there was an intruder, it was a would-be kidnapper that killed Jonbenet. It wasn't anyone in their family, and it certainly wasn't Burke. So it's not an irrelevant lie. It's part of their whole cause, if you like, to maintain this lie to protect Burke, which is, like I say, arguably for good reasons. So not irrelevant. And he goes on to say some things, interesting things about compulsive and pathological liars, which I'll pick up on a bit later.
Negative about anybody. He's just a good person. And
One
so
shoulder
to
shrug.
take the brunt of that,
It's his right shoulder.
assault is just so unfair. When we lost Jonbenet, she got very focused on Burke. I mean, that was our goal, was try to give him as normal a childhood as we could possibly give him amidst all
Which
this
is a good goal, you know. That's
chaos
commendable.
that was going around us. We were afraid. Somebody had attacked our family. We don't know who it was.
Now, I'm going to comment more broadly about the case now. He says we were afraid. This, DD doesn't pick up on this, but, and in fairness, it's not really to do with that. It's not really specifically to do with how he presents in this interview. This is more of a broader comment about the case. So Patsy woke up, found this ransom note, called the police. The police were in the house, and it wasn't until after the police were in the house that they found the body of Jonbenet. Is it Jonbenet or Jonbenet? I don't know. I think it's Jonbenet. I'm losing my thread a little bit here. Where was I going? Yes, afraid. Now, if you genuinely believe that somebody has tried to kidnap, somebody's been into your house while you're asleep, and the whole family's asleep, and has killed your daughter, and may still be in the house, there's no reason to believe that they're not still in the house, you would be very afraid. Most people would be very afraid in that situation. But apparently they left Burke in his bed. I think they woke him up eventually, but they left him in his bed for some time. They didn't go and check on him immediately. They didn't appear during those moments to show any indications of concern that there might be abductor, murderer, perpetrator in the house. So I don't think they were afraid. I think that's another lie. And they weren't afraid because they knew there was no third party murderer. So I think that's a little porky pie from John. Have you noticed any lip juts, by the way? I haven't actually spotted any since the last one.
And we were frightened, quite frankly.
No, you weren't.
And one of the challenges, we wanted to keep Burke out of...
So quite frankly, it's a little bit like when people say honestly or to be honest. That's part of statement analysis. People are more likely to say to be honest when they're not being honest. And of course, it's part of their baseline. It's something they just say all the time. But quite frankly, so to be frank means to be honest and candid.
Photograph out of video and pictures so that people would know what he looked like. And so how do we get him from, we were living with friends.
This bit's interesting.
So he could finish his school year. How do we get him to school without being photographed? And it became a project. In a way, it was diversion from grieving. We would send out a decoy car. Burke.
Now, isn't that interesting? Okay, it became a project. And I think, this accidental death of Jonbenet became a project. and they started using deception and staging things. And they're talking about a deception here. They're talking about staging something. So how many people in this situation, I mean, it's commendable that they want to protect Burke from identification or from any kind of harassment. That's great, you know, I'm all for that. And I don't mind people being deceptive in order to do that. That's a good time to be deceptive. But it's interesting that was their way of thinking. We'll get a decoy car, a diversion from the grieving, he calls it. I think just like the ransom note and the garroting was a diversion from the accidental death. So I think he's given himself away here.
Could be in another car on the floor in the back seat.
Just to go to school?
Yeah, to go to school. And we get him to school unphotographed because we wanted to protect him.
What were the kids at school like?
I want to protect him.
Well, the kids are wonderful. And
Really?
Oh, yeah. And
I feel like that's the first time I've ever heard that. Normally school age kids are awful.
Look at the surprise and shock on her face.
They seemed like they really were great.
Burke's classmates were wonderful. Really? Well, I guess. I don't actually know. That's basically what just happened. And just like his lie about Patsy, the fact that he's loose with the facts about something so trivial somehow makes it worse. If John's this casually deceptive about the small stuff, how can we take his word about anything important? Also, notice how John reacted when Ashley caught him in his lie, or guesstimate, or whatever you want to call it, about Burke's friends. He wasn't ashamed or embarrassed like you or I would be if we got caught just making up answers, which is yet another hallmark of a compulsive liar. And that's because they rarely take what they're saying seriously to begin with. Of course, I can't diagnose John as a compulsive liar. I'm not a clinician.
Well, compulsive lying is not a condition, so it's not something you can be diagnosed with, as far as I'm aware. I haven't haven't double checked the manual for that, but yeah, again, I'm not with you on this one, DD. To me, your definition is a compulsive liar lies for no reason. Well, okay, I get what you're saying. So you're saying that John is lying by saying that the kids at Burke's school were fine, were good, when they weren't. So that's an irrelevant lie. That would be a better argument for an irrelevant lie than the last one that you made. So I'll give you that. Just as an aside, Burke is a terrible name to give a child, isn't it? Maybe not in the USA, but in the UK, Burke means something. A Burke, B-E-R-K, is somebody that's generally it's a term that's used to describe somebody that's a bit of a fool or an idiot. But it actually comes from Cockney rhyming slang. So I gave you a bit of Cockney rhyming slang before. I said pork pies. So with this is a tangent, but it's an interesting one. So with Cockney rhyming slang, generally speaking, there are two parts to Cockney rhyming slang. So, like for example, road is frog and toad, but you don't say frog and toad. You say frog. You say, "Oh, I'm gonna get on the frog." Okay, so that's why you say. So people used to say pork for lies, but then it became porkies or porky pies. So telling porkies lies. Burke actually originates from Cockney rhyming slang, and the original Cockney rhyming slang was Berkshire Hunt. Now this gets a bit confusing because Burke and Bark sound differently, but Berkshire, which is where my family come from, is spelled B-E-R-K-S-H-I-R-E. So it would have been Berkshire Hunt, and of course I'll leave it to your imagination what that rhymes with and what that means in Cockney rhyming slang. But it got corrupted to Burke. So somebody was a Burke. It was if you call somebody a Burke, you're calling them a Berkshire Hunt. Of course, those not familiar with all the idiosyncrasies of English slang, that would have been a fox hunt. So lots of counties back in the day and still today have their own hunts, which is an organisation of people that go fox hunting. So the Berkshire Hunt would have been a real thing, and something that Berkshire borders on London, so people in London would have been familiar with Berkshire, and some would have been familiar with the Berkshire Hunt. So when they were looking for rhyming slang for the C word that shall not be spoken, they came up with Berkshire Hunt. So Burke in British slang at least is not good. It doesn't have the same connotations that it did. It's kind of softened over the years. It just means somebody that's a bit of a fool. You can say Burke in polite company, but to call somebody Burke from a British perspective isn't good. But of course he was American. They might not even have been aware of that connotation. So yeah, at the end of that tangent, we'll get back to the main show.
But I definitely can't rule it out, especially after this next part where John goes off the rails.
Well, the kids are wonderful. And
Really?
Oh, yeah. And
Look at her face.
Normally school-age kids are awful.
well, I say that, I mean, from my perspective, they seem like they really were great.
Did you guys have any moments with him where you're asking, I think about like kids, like what are the things that the parents don't know? Like what's happening?
No. You know your children.
Well, and I'm not necessarily talking about like
Tongue
doing
jet.
something, but I'm saying like, they hang out together, they have the same group of friends. Like, was there someone that maybe she didn't tell mom and dad about, but she's going to tell her brother about, or her brother? Like, did you guys have any of those like moments with Burke to be like help us figure this out?
No, because we really just wanted him to be separated from it, from the chaos, and we wanted him to be normal, and that was very difficult because
Interesting kind of back off gesture with the hands there.
Going through the grocery store line and seeing your sister's picture on the front of the tabloid, it was difficult to give him a normal life.
Do you think he might still know something that he like doesn't even know he knows?
No. Burke's a very solid person, despite all. Yeah, what's called.
Now, 2 comments. One is just to say, if DD has picked up a point, I'm not going to make that point as well and duplicate that. So, and generally speaking, I agree with most of the points that he's made. If I'm not so sure about them, I would have said. So that's the first point. And the second point is this occurs in this clip, and it occurs a little bit later on as well, if I remember correctly. There seems to be some reluctance for John to refer to Burke as a man. He uses every other word, and sometimes his sentences kind of run out. He runs out on a sentence and pauses, and then approaches the sentence again from another angle. So what is it about? What's that about? It might be nothing. It doesn't indicate guilt or necessarily mean anything suspicious, but it's interesting. It interests me. I'm curious. Why doesn't he see Burke as a man? He sees him as an adult, and he says some nice things about him, but he doesn't see him as a man. So does he still view him? Well, yeah. What does man mean to John? So what is it? What does this say about his perception of his son?
Well, they just graduated, had a good job ever since. Well thought of by his employers, and very, very disciplined.
Pause is a long time before he finds that word.
He's a good adult. He was a good son. If he knew anything,
was a good son. Past tense.
Not be something he would thought
is important. That's what I'm saying. Like, I wonder if there's something in there, like, so I know in the Dr. Phil, one of the things that came out was the idea that you used a flashlight to put him to sleep, and that he came back down to play with a toy. Like, when he's down and people are sleeping, has he ever talked, like, did he get the sense that someone else was in the home? Did he hear anything? I don't know how long was he up?
No, we've never asked him that. I don't know. I didn't know, frankly, that he got up again. I'm not sure he did. Again, that's fiction. There's so much fiction out there.
Guys, it's just thrown out.
I missed that card that Dee Dee flashed then.
You got up to play with the toy, and Burke says, yeah, I did. It was something that I wanted to put together. And then it kind of just like,
well, again, when we got home, Jonbenet
fell asleep.
But I know you and Burke came.
I put her to bed. Burke and I sat down and tried to put together one of his little toys for a little while, just because he wanted to. And then he went off to bed.
You're saying, like,
now,
whatever Dr. Phil said and Burke said on the...
Kind of pause there. You used the word just, I believe, in there. Now, just is one of the words that's specifically mentioned in statement analysis as just something to pay attention to, mainly because usually somebody's minimizing or what's the word, obscuring something. You know, like Guy Fawkes would probably said, "Oh, I just went into the cellars under Parliament to find my watch, which I'd lost." And that's a bit of a anachronistic statement. So just is like, I'm just don't mind me. I'm just coming in to blah blah blah, you know, where something more nefarious is going on. So he did use the word just then, which I didn't pick up the first time. Now I'm not going to be able to get to the end of this video because I actually have a client appointment shortly, so I need to round up, and we've got quite a bit of the video to go, haven't we? So we're not going to be able to get to the end. So we'll
show he didn't come back down.
I didn't know that he came back down. If he did,
Does stuff like that make you want to be like, oh my gosh, maybe there's something he knows?
So
said something.
just to kind of shortcut this a little bit. DD rightfully and eloquently points out John's complete lack of curiosity in this respect. That, you know, do you think Burke might know something? He might even now he might remember something that happened that night. You know, did he hear something? Did he hear somebody gaining entry to the premises? Did he see somebody creeping around? And he's like, oh no, you would have said if he did. No, I didn't bother asking him. So it's a real casual dismissal. If you thought, I mean, if I thought an intruder had been in my house and killed my daughter and I had a son, I certainly would, in a sensitive way, ask my son if he'd heard or seen anything. Everyone would, wouldn't they? Surely. So we're just going to skim.
Curiosity is the
Skim through this. So Dee Dee makes that
but
point.
we were portrayed as I was president of a company that had done $1 billion in revenue. We were a distributor, we're like a grocery store.
Okay, so yeah, this is a bit that I can speak about rather than necessarily having to watch the whole thing. So the interviewer asks John, you know, why the public were so kind of hostile and suspicious towards them, and he cites two things. One is Patsy and Jonbenet's involvement in child pageants, which, you know, a lot of people have a discomfort, suspicion, distaste about. I certainly do. And you see lots of pictures of Jonbenet dressed up like an adult, fully made up, doing little performances. And there's another channel it's called Psychology in Seattle that does a very good analysis of this, a very fair breakdown of, you know, the pros and cons of child pageants, which is really balanced and nuanced and detailed analysis of it. If I can find it, I'll put it in the link. But lots of people, me included, I have to say, you know, feel some distaste around this, and that was one of the things that prejudiced people against the Ramsey family. Although, as Dee Dee points out, perhaps the fact that they're lying through their little teeth might be something that prejudiced them even more than that. He thinks it's a bit of a red herring, really. And the other point that John makes here is people were prejudiced against them because they were perceived as rich. And he says, oh, you know, I only sort of came into money later in life and blah, 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 blah. So they were rich, no doubt about it. He had just received a Christmas bonus of £118,000, which is a nice Christmas day. Not 118,000 pounds, I believe. Yeah, dollars, sorry, being all British. But they had a plane, they had their own bloody plane. You know, so they weren't poor. So I think he's minimizing, and we're not really wealthy, you know, we're all right, but you know, we're not rich. But yeah, they are. So sorry we've run out of time. I didn't think this would take so long to go through. I always talk more than I think I'm going to talk. So what we got here, we'll just have a quick look.
And I just want to make a caveat about this because I see so many comments, you know, well, we've evolved to use body language. Yes. If I smile, it means I'm happy. If I fold my arms, yes, it can mean I'm angry.
Oh, he's having a bit of a bash at body language. He does that. He doesn't like it.
That was her personality. and they had fun with it, but it wasn't an obsession.
So that's John
And of course, the
saying
media
that
presented
that
it as-
Jonbenet enjoyed the pageants and all that kind of thing, that it was a fun thing. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't this pushy, ambitious mother, which Patsy has been accused of. So, okay, I'm going to leave it there.
Imagine, like, if it was
Shush.
me,
I said I was going to leave it there. I like that interview. So what's the takeaway from this, really, is I'd be interested in your thoughts on the case. I'd be interested in your thoughts on the interview. I'd be interested in your thoughts on DD's observations, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on my observations. And if you want to find more out about the case, to give you more context, there's loads on this. It's so famous. So much has been said, and I think there was a Netflix documentary recently. Just be polite. Always interested in your opinions, but be nice, and we'll have a good discussion. I hope you've enjoyed this. Sorry it went on so long. Rangimarie, and I'll see you soon.